Hey guys, welcome back to Rule of Two Review. Today I'm excited to do something a little bit different. Today is going to be part one of my two-part look into whether or not the 8th generation has been a letdown. So this has been something that I've been thinking about for a very, very long time. It always seems to be a relevant topic. People are always discussing this, especially on the YouTube gaming community too. People get really involved in this conversation of if video games are doing the things now that we think that they should be. More than ever, with the internet and the advent of things like YouTube and different gaming-related sites, it's very easy for people to get their opinions out there, for them to be shared, for people to be overly critical and discuss the things that they think are happening that are good or bad in anything they care about, let alone the gaming space. It's actually really common in the gaming space. It's why I have a YouTube channel, discussing basically the same stuff. The 8th generation has been very, very unique, I think, not only because of the internet sort of status that the world lives in at the time that the 8th generation is happening, but also because of just basically a lot of the bad press that the 8th gen is mired in. And a lot of that I agree with, but some of it I don't agree with. And that's kind of why I wanted to do this today. I kind of wanted to explore some of what's happening with the 8th generation. Of course, we're discussing kind of the console cycle because it's the console cycles that really dictate what period of time any generation is. The PC is something that's always consistently going, kind of moving at its own pace, really, its own clip, but it's still sort of as relevant to whatever given console generation is happening at that time. So the PC is still sort of included in this conversation, as is like the handhelds, but really the console market is what's determining that, and it's really what I'm ultimately talking about today, even though PC will sort of enter the conversation a little bit. The 8th generation really began in 2012, November, when Nintendo launched the Wii U. That was the first 8th generation console that hit the market. Then, of course, a year later in 2013, the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One came out, and there's just been a lot of different things, good and bad, happening in gaming ever since, So the question of how much has the 8th generation built or improved upon the 7th generation, the previous generation, Xbox 360, Nintendo Wii, PlayStation 3. If it's been, the legitimate kind of leap forward in gaming design and in graphical capability that people really wanted, has it felt not important enough? Some gimmicks have gone away. Other new gimmicks seem to be right around the corner. Some people think that gaming is moving in a good evolutionary step forward. Other people think that it's mired in the past and not able to do the right things to satisfy gamers. There's a lot going on. I have a lot of opinions on all sides of the fence when it comes to gaming in general and what the 8th generation has been providing to us. So, like I said, I'm doing this as a two-part series. I want to make a couple short videos here, so not to cram it all into one space. You get a full glimpse into one side of the 8th generation in one video, and then you're going to get the opposite kind of viewpoint in the other video. So here in part one, we're going to start with the bad. Because the bad is the polarizing stuff. This is the thing that I think most people want to talk about. If you're talking about any sort of gaming topic, it's the bad that people really focus on and they get involved with, and some people even get excited about. I really don't. If you've been following Rule of Two Review or myself for a while, you know that I'm not really the negative guy. It takes a lot to make me mad. It certainly can happen, but it really takes a lot for me to be like, oh, shit, damn it, I'm just so angry about this. It takes a lot for that to happen. But I still I think that it was still smart to start with the bad because there definitely is a lot of bad to discuss. And then I'm also excited to kind of end this whole little two-part series on the positive side. I want to end on the upbeat. So that's kind of the purpose here. But with that said, I'm going to go ahead and discuss some of what I think the 8th gen has been doing in this just over 3 years now that maybe isn't so great. Okay, so when looking at the bad of the 8th generation, the things that are happening currently with the PlayStation 3, Xbox One, Wii U, and PC market today, here in early 2016, that really aren't great, I noticed kind of a trend when I was looking over the notes that I put together, everything I have in front of me here of, some of the examples I can bring up, what's good and bad. And the main trend that I noticed throughout all of the problems I see, almost all of the problems that I see, is the internet. The internet is kind of the cause of a lot of the greatest things happening in gaming nowadays, but also most of the worst things, whether it's directly related to the networks themselves or whether it's kind of byproducts to the internet that people don't really think about. That's sort of the thread line that's connecting all of the bad things I see happening in gaming. So the first thing that comes up really Very obvious. That's why I wanted to start with a very big one here. The DLC practices that are happening with game companies right now in AAA game development and the microtransactions we're seeing. It's insane how much this generation more than last. To be fair, this and even a lot of these bad things were actually put in place, obviously, last generation, in the last, 5, 6, 10 years of gaming. It's when a lot of these started, but the level at which these things are happening now, that's kind of the really scary part, and it's what's leading to a lot of the problems. So the DLC practices and the microtransactions, I lump those all together because I think they're part of the same ultimate problem. Some of the biggest companies in gaming, Electronic Arts, Ubisoft, Activision, Rockstar, they have this problem of not feeling comfortable getting just one purchase out of the gamer, or not knowing how to design and develop games in a way that makes them profitable or successful if someone just buys a freaking game, off a shelf or downloads it digitally, and that's the end of it. That just doesn't really work. So we have this issue where companies are creating extra content, or in many unfortunate cases, keeping content out of games, a whole nother huge mess of a problem. Or creating other purchases within games to complete these experiences that is, of course, costing the gamer more money. And again, DLC started many years ago, and I do think that there's a fantastic way to do DLC, and in many cases, DLC has been pretty cool. I've certainly bought my fair share of DLC in the past. I won't pretend like I haven't. But I think that it's happening to a level now where it's become a huge problem. And of course, this is something that the internet allows. You have to have an internet connection to take a game you picked up at a store 3 months ago and then put it in your system and get online with it and say, oh, now I'm going to download the brand new chapter that I thought probably should have been in the game, but now is for sale for another $14.99 on this console's shop. That's really something that the internet makes possible. And so you could argue, well, DLC sometimes is pretty cool because it adds more to an already complete game. Totally agree. That's fantastic. But I think we all know that a lot of the problems we're seeing nowadays aren't with DLC coming from complete games. They're coming from arguably incomplete games. The microtransactions problem. Oh my God. I cannot tell you guys how sick to my stomach I get and how volcanically angry I feel when I turn on a game, even games that I really enjoy, and I go into the options menu and I see dollar signs and I see a cart to put items into and then check out. It's like, what is this happening? Halo 5, a game that I really love, has microtransactions and dollar signs throughout all of its multiplayer menu stuff. And I knew it was coming. It's like I wasn't surprised. I'm getting used to it. But when I see it, I'm just like, ugh. Why? It just feels wrong. It feels gross. You kind of want to just be like, ew, like, what am I looking at? Get this off of me. Like, microtransaction shit. We don't want that. Halo 5 is unfortunately a recent example of a big problem. Mortal Kombat X, released early 2015, another game that I really, really enjoy, but there's microtransactions. You can buy easy fatalities. You can buy brand new characters. You can buy, I don't know, probably outfits and things like that. That's been the big thing, is like the really superfluous kind of things, like a new outfit or a new emote. The emote thing is such a dumb problem to me. Why are we selling the ability to emote? Have your character have some sort of emote in a game. I just think that that's ridiculous. Games that I like, again, do this, but I think that that's a horrible thing. It's just not good for gaming. It's making people angry. One of my favorite games currently, Star Wars Battlefront. I really like this game, but it has the DLC problem. We all know about the Season Pass, $50 that was announced before the game came out. Why wouldn't this content be in the game first? Why do we announce before a game is complete that there's more stuff to sell us down the road? Years ago, when DLC first started, it was fantastic because a game would be previewed, it would release, people would buy it and love it, and it would be complete and done and maybe disappear from their thoughts. And then 7, 8, 9 months, a year later, hey, there's this DLC coming out. Here's a bunch of new content. Here's 7 hours of new content for Fallout 3 a year after the game has been out and, months after you've completed it. That'll now make you want to come back to it for a couple of bucks and play brand new stuff for a game you loved a year ago. Whoa, that was cool. That was like, hey, we completed this game, we gave it to you, it was done, you loved it, but since you've played it, we've been working on some other things. Here's some new stuff we're giving you for a couple of bucks, but it's going to expand your experience. It's going to continue the experience of a game you loved. That was great, and that rarely happens nowadays. They're giving us the Batman Arkham Knights and the Star Wars Battlefronts of the world and saying, hey, this game that comes out in 3 months, you're going to have more stuff to buy 2 months after that, and then another 2 months, and then another 2 months. Obviously, Call of Duty, a franchise I enjoy, has had this problem for a very long time. Evolve has been a really bad example of this. Evolve is one of the worst offenders here of this idea, where that game released with almost no content and nothing but extra crap to buy. I bought that game and gave it a shot on the recommendation of my younger brother and a lot of his really good friends who enjoyed the gameplay. So I gave it a shot, and I will admit that the gameplay was also terrible. If the gameplay was good, I maybe could have at least given it a pass in the sense that, well, it's still fun to play. I didn't even like the gameplay, and then the fact that there was nothing to do but the same monotonous shit over and over again, not a good thing. So, to the game companies out there, this DLC stuff and this microtransaction stuff, it's a problem. No one really wants it. We get that you're making money. I can't necessarily fault you per se for doing something that gamers keep paying you for. At the end of the day, you're supposed to be doing what you can to make more money. And if it works, yes, I guess you have to continue it. But isn't there a problem if you make a $60 game that sells 4 million copies in 2 months and you're still not breaking even or making a profit? Obviously, there's a problem with game development. Many, many, many other companies out there are not having these DLC problems with these games. They're not giving us all this stuff, and they're still having successful games, selling a couple million units. So what are these other guys doing wrong that isn't creating a profit? How can Evolve, that game with nothing happening in it and like a mediocre graphics engine, possibly have not been breaking even selling it for $60 a pop, when another game like Super Smash Bros. Or Mario Kart 8 can? That just blows my mind. So those are problems. The AAA game companies, all these companies who are creating incomplete games and having to sell us more content after the fact, or games that just need all of these little transactions for us to buy some of the other stuff within it. All these companies that are doing this, you're doing it wrong. It's not making people happy, and it's a huge problem happening in gaming today. I look at some of the other problems that are happening. Incomplete games kind of builds off of the idea of the DLC practices. Very, very common today for games to release feeling like there wasn't a lot of effort put into them or a lot of content put into them, which also feeds into the other thing, broken games. There have been so many cases of broken games, big, huge AAA monster release games. Obviously, Assassin's Creed Unity is like one of the most high-profile issues that we've had the last couple of years, where a game released unplayable. And Ubisoft worked tirelessly to prevent the public from finding out that it was going to be released completely broken until the day that it released. So like they knew there was a problem and they were still comfortable putting it out, and all they wanted was for people to not know it was broken and buy it first and then find out when they got home to enjoy their brand new game that it wasn't going to work. That is a huge, huge problem. Halo the Master Chief Collection, Battlefield 4, Batman Arkham Knight on the PC. We know the disaster that was. All of these games are good examples of huge high-profile games that people were very excited for. I own Master Chief Collection, and I own Arkham Knight, and I do like those games. Luckily, I bought Arkham Knight on my PS4, so I didn't have that problem that the PC owners unfortunately had. Master Chief Collection, I never played it online, so I didn't run into those issues. But people shouldn't have problems with their games being broken. You know, if we're spending so much money to make games that they require, $50 of DLC after the purchase for the following year, how dare they possibly not work in the first place? What an unbelievable stab in the back to consumers. That is just so disgusting. Like I said before, it's gross. It makes me feel icky inside to know that people and game companies would actually do this. Some developers who are great. Ubisoft can have so much magic behind their development at times when they do the right thing. They can be so great. Rockstar is fantastic. EA, you could take them or leave them. Rocksteady has been so wonderful with the Batman stuff. How do you completely screw these things up? Halo is one of the most lauded series of all time in gaming, and they're known for having fantastically running engines and very few bugs and just being great games and experiences. They've been online since 2004 in the dial-up days, and still they couldn't get Halo the Master Chief Collection to work online properly for 7 or 8 months or something ridiculous. I mean, you guys, you're spending so much money in these millions and millions of dollars in these inflated budgets to make these games. If anything, they better goddamn work right out of the package or as soon as they're downloaded onto people's consoles. That is a must. That is non-negotiable, and it's crazy how often it happens. And it doesn't happen with small games with little teams. Those are the games that come out working great. Those guys are doing great things, making sure that their games are releasing and they work and people are going to be happy with them right away. The big guys with teams of thousands of people and millions upon millions of dollars, they're the ones having these issues. doesn't add up to me, man. I personally see a huge problem with that stuff. Let's talk about the downgraded games problem. We all know what happened with Watch Dogs. We all know what seems to be happening with The Division currently. There's a really strange issue with game companies just getting so excited and overzealous to show us a game, a brand new game that they're working on. It's going to be so great and everyone's going to love it. It may be 5 years down the road, but here you go. This is it. They want to show us the best looking content they could possibly have available. But then when it comes out a couple of years later, it doesn't live up. Destiny is another game that kind of ran into that. Rainbow Six Siege, or whatever the newest one, is something that kind of ran into that. And it shows another problem that game companies are less worse about delivering a promise and being truthful and honest as they are about drumming up excitement to get those day one sales. Everyone wants to break a new pre-order record and get the game sold and make millions of dollars in the first couple of days before everyone realizes it's fallen to shit or it's not going to live up to the hype. You know, they're so worried about that. It's actually a problem the movie industry has too, by the way. Obviously a different conversation for a different time. You know, these game companies are so worried about this, and obviously it's a business. It's all about the bottom line dollar. I understand that. But I think that there are still ways to go about it that don't feel false or like, you know, the consumer is being lied to. There are plenty of companies, both in gaming and outside of gaming, that release products that don't have this problem, where the consumer doesn't feel lied to. And even though I actually enjoy Watch Dogs, and I want to be excited for The Division, although I'm finding it harder and harder to be excited, it's still a problem, and it's not okay to do that. You know, it's like, if you know that you can't deliver on what you're showing, then don't show it. I don't think that Ubisoft was surprised when they were in the middle of developing Watch Dogs and like, wow, we can't make this game look like it did 2 years ago on stage at E3. What do we do? I guess we're going to have to downgrade it. Man, what a bummer. We didn't see that coming. There is no way. Guaranteed, they created a fake engine and a fake CG sort of put together trailer to emulate fake gameplay, and that's what they showed us when they first showed us Watch Dogs. And they knew, I guarantee you guys, that they knew that the game was not going to be like that. They knew it. No one would ever convince me that Ubisoft did not know what was going to happen with Watch Dogs. Again, a game that I enjoy from a gameplay standpoint, I will admit that, but the problem still stands. I mean, they showed us a false game. They showed us a shell of a game. It was like a drape pulled over this fake game to just show us this really pretty stuff and be like, surprise, it's not actually that. Seems like that's happening with The Division. There's been a lot of talk about that too, so that's a very relevant game. Comes out in a couple of months' time. You know, the beta or the alpha has just been going, and some people feel like it's just not what they showed a couple of years ago. So that'll be curious to see how it plays out, man, but you know, I get you guys wanting to be excited to show us games. We're gamers. We want to buy great games. We want to be excited. We love a brand new trailer reveal of a game that we didn't know about or a game that we've been excited to hear about, and it looks awesome and it blows our socks off. Like, we want that, and it helps us want to give you our money, obviously, as proven by the sales of Watch Dogs, for example. But you can't do that, you guys. Like, that's a huge, huge problem. Couple of other things, you know, going back to the internet problem, we've had a huge issue with network hacks. You know, PSN and Xbox Live, and I think to a small degree Steam, have had problems with being frickin' hacked. Like, I don't know what this hacking issue is right now. I don't know why it's a thing. I don't know why people who like to hack want to hack networks. I just don't get it. It's not a skill I have. It's not anything I find interesting. Nintendo's network has been completely free from all this stuff, which makes me very, very happy. I hope it stays that way, but chances are at some point it won't, and we're just going to have to deal with it at that time. A lot of people get really mad, like, at the network owners, at like Sony and Microsoft for getting hacked. They get really mad at them, and I get why, because they say, hey, we're paying you guys, you know, a monthly or an annual fee to have access to your online network, and yet you still can't use the millions of dollars you're making from that. You can't keep it safe from these hackers, and that's definitely true. I do feel like they should be able to do something to prevent that from being a problem, but you know what? At the end of the day, it is what it is. I can't blame the attacked for what the attackers do, you know? Like, that's kind of the way I look at it. That's like if someone gets mugged on the side of the street, you can be like, God, you shouldn't have been walking around at night by yourself. And like, yeah, that's kind of true, but how are you going to blame that person who got the shit beat out of them and their money stolen? No, you got to blame the people who mugged someone. Those are the true criminals. And in the hacking scenario, I kind of look at it the same way. I have to liken the hackers to what the criminal is in the mugging scenario. Like, they're the ones attacking a network they're just being a network. They're just open, the servers are running, people are playing games, and it's hunky-dory until someone comes along and is like, psh, fuck you, now you're not working. And then everyone at home is like, oh crap, I can't play my games. So that's a problem. And, regardless of where the blame lies, it's an issue that's happening nowadays. The internet has opened up this problem to the gaming world, and I think it sucks. I've yet to run into it personally, except for the 2011 hack on Sony's thing. That sucked, where it was down for like 8 weeks or 9 weeks or something. That was crazy news. That was a very, very crazy time. So that definitely affected me. Other than that, I haven't really been affected by it this generation, but I do think it sucks that it's a problem. A lot of people have been affected by it. It costs these companies money, and I don't want these companies to have to be wasting money to fix problems. I'd rather them be able to just build the network that's protected beforehand. Hopefully, we get to the point where the government or something can like prevent these hacks beforehand, because a lot of these hackers like gloat about it before they do it, and I don't know how that's even legal, and I don't know how the country and the world doesn't have a way to prevent it when they know where it's going to come from. I just don't understand that. But it's not my side of the tech, man, so I just don't get it. I think it sucks that it happens. The underwhelming graphics is another big problem. That's actually a big conversation. We're here in 2016. It's the 8th generation. And people, every time we get to a new generation, have a certain expectation of visuals. I'm not a graphics guy, per se. You hear me say that all the time. I like pretty graphics, but it does not define a quality game to me at all. It can factor into it, but it's not like the be-all, end-all. But there's definitely a case to be made for when new tech comes out, when new consoles come out. People want better graphics. That's like one of the first things everyone looks for. When I see a brand new console and graphics I'd never seen before, I do get excited. My eyes get big and wide, and I'm like, wow, this is amazing. Who would have thought graphics could ever look this good? And this generation, I think you can definitely make a case that the graphics haven't been that exciting. I did recently say that Star Wars Battlefront is the best looking game I've ever seen, and that's still true. So I do have to say, hey, at least we've gotten Star Wars Battlefront. We've gotten the best looking game I've ever seen. So the 8th generation has brought that. But on the whole, even some of the best looking games I've seen, like all the Call of Duty games look really great. Halo 5 is fantastic. Arkham Knight is gorgeous. Mario Kart is so good looking. Super Smash Brothers is like to die for with 60 frames per second. These games are really very pretty. And yes, they do look better than the previous generation. But as many people have pointed out, it's not this astronomical leap over what we were doing the last 10 years. It's just not. They're just slightly better looking games. So again, reminding you that I don't think that graphics make the game, and people shouldn't hang their hat on that as far as any generation goes, or as far as just the quality of a game goes. But it definitely bears mentioning. It's something that I think is important to consider when you look at the 8th generation. It's not delivering in the visuals department. And like I said, graphics don't make a game good, but they can certainly factor into the quality of a game. I would like to see graphics continue to get better. I don't need amazing graphics, but I wouldn't mind seeing them be better than they have been so far. To me, if you were to ask me 5 years ago what the 8th generation visuals would look like, I would see a game like what Battlefront looks like and think that's the bare minimum standard of the 8th generation. That shouldn't be the best thing we've seen so far. That should be like what the average game looks like. And then there's the whole games not being able to run in 1080p, natively very often. That doesn't happen very often. And that's obviously very true. I think that we should easily be at 1080p and it shouldn't be a struggle, but apparently that's not the case. I don't know what the deal is. Apparently the hardware isn't good enough in consoles to match it. You got to be playing these games on PC. And that just sucks, man. They should have been able to very easily make a huge leap in visuals over the previous generation, but I think all the companies just wanted to save money. Even my favorite company, Nintendo, obviously, they made a very underpowered system. I love the Wii U. It makes beautiful games, but, it's the weakest of the three. It's not a big leap over what the previous generation could do. And you know what? These systems, gamers deserve to get more out of these systems. We really, really do when it comes to graphics. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about on the bad side of the 8th generation so far, and this is something that's very personal, okay? So not a lot of people will agree with this one. That's why I saved it for last. But I see it as maybe not the greatest thing. And for me, it's the growing digital download market and the fact that even some really great games can only be purchased digital. I know it's a very sticky scenario. If you know me or you've been following Rule of Two Review, this won't even surprise you. You've heard me say that. I don't really care for downloading things. It's not interesting to me. I like owning games physically. I like having a game case. I like going to a store to buy it and drive home with it. I like opening the package. I like putting the disc into my system. All these normal, obvious things. I grew up always doing that. And while I see the benefit to being able to download stuff, I think that I think it's a shame to see it growing, because it's obviously, the more the digital download market grows, the closer we get to physical media going away altogether. And that's probably the number one reason I have a problem with it. I recognize that it's great for people who like it. So I am all for the option existing, okay? That's probably like the caveat to my whole issue with it here is I definitely think that people who like to download stuff should be able to. It's a huge benefit to the internet today. It's a huge benefit that these things can exist and make it easier for people, because some people love doing it. And I think that it's since the technology allows for it, people should have that option. People should be able to download games if they want to download games. My option is I don't want to download games. I want to buy my games, and I want to own them, and I want to have my collections and stacks of game cases. Some people may hate it. I love that stuff. And what happens is we're getting to the point where the more the digital download market is growing, the closer we're getting to having my option taken away completely. And I know it's inevitable. I know at some point, whether it's 5 years or 25 years, at some point there will be no physical games. That's just what's going to happen. But I want to hold on to the physical game market for as long as humanly possible. And like I was saying, as the digital market grows, my option, like I want you guys to have your option to download, I want to keep my option to buy physical. That's the option I want, and I know we're going to be getting away from it, and I just hate to see it being pulled away from me. It's like my arms are outstretched trying to grab and hold on to physical games, and the tugging against my strength is getting stronger and stronger because more and more people are downloading. Stores are going to start closing. I mean, who knows when stores like GameStop and stuff are going to no longer exist because physical games just have no purpose. I mean, at some point it's going to happen, you know. And then there are the cases of games that I really, really love that have already existed that I don't even have the option to purchase currently. Fatal Frame 5 is like one of the best examples I could think of. It's a game that recently came out that did exist physical in other territories, but in North America, they didn't release it physical. I had to download that game. And so while it's great that the downloading option at least made that game possible for me to play, I think we should exist in a world where Nintendo had to say, here's Fatal Frame, and just release it in stores. Fast Racing Neo is another game. I would rather go to a store and buy Fast Racing Neo. You know, if it sells at a budget price, then that's fine, but I'd rather pick it up. Ori and the Blind Forest, one of my favorite games from last year. I would rather go and pick that game up in a store on a disc. Two games, Shovel Knight and the Resident Evil remake of the remake that came out all last year. Those are two examples of games that initially only released digital, and I picked them up digital. Far down the road, they did get physical releases, so at least that's a scenario where they released digital, and that really sucks. Okay, I had to download these games, but eventually we got physical copies. Resident Evil Revelations 2 also did the same thing. The Walking Dead games all did the same thing, where eventually physical editions did come out. So while I still would rather them just be physical from day one, I do have to acknowledge that some steps are still being taken on occasion to take digital games and make them physical, and I super appreciate that. If that continues to happen, at least it's like a compromise I'm okay with. But ultimately, I see the 8th generation, you know, being like one of the initial forbearing steps to killing the physical game market. And that just makes me really sad. A lot of people will love that. They won't see that as a negative thing, but I see it as a negative thing because I sure as hell love my physical games. Okay, so that's going to wrap up all of the bad stuff for today. You can see with the length of this video why I wanted to make this a two-parter, so I could spend a lot of time talking about the bad. And then next time on part 2, I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about the good. And I'm really excited for that. I think that these two videos hopefully will start a very large conversation amongst you guys. I know a lot of people are going to have a lot to say on both sides of the fence. I know that most people, I think, are pretty down on the 8th generation overall, which I totally get. You just heard 15, 20 some odd whatever minutes of me, you know, yelling at you about all these bad things happening. And like I said, the thread line is the internet. The internet allows for digital downloads of games. The internet allows for DLC, and the internet allows for microtransactions. It allows for games to release broken because the companies know that 7 or 8 months later they can finally release patches and start making them work. They'd rather just get them out now. Downgrading games, the networks being hacked. The networks themselves are run by the internet. So the internet is this thing that brings us so many great things to gaming, but it's also creating a lot of its biggest problems, especially with this 8th generation. So that's my very long and thorough breakdown of why the 8th generation is kind of a letdown so far. But again, there's light at the end of the tunnel, because with part 2, I'm going to discuss all of the good stuff. So thanks so much for tuning in to this very long video, guys. I will catch you next time on part 2.